Welcome to the Deep Dive podcast channel.
Glad to be here.
Have you ever noticed how, well, sometimes in your closest relationships, things kind of shift, and maybe the focus moves a bit away from your own inner world?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're going to explore those quiet ways we can sometimes lose sight of ourselves, often without even realizing it's happening.
It was a really fascinating dynamic and actually incredibly common.
Oh.
That slow, almost imperceptible fading of your individual identity when you're part of a close bond.
Yeah.
We'll be diving into some of the psychological reasons behind why this happens.
I mean, it's usually not some big dramatic event, is it? It feels more like a gradual drift.
Exactly, a silent drift.
Those little compromises, maybe things you don't even think twice about at the time, but they add up over months, maybe years. And suddenly you feel disconnected from who you used to be.
That's it.
And, if exploring these kinds of relationship dynamics and maybe your own sense of self resonates with you, we'd genuinely love it if you'd consider subscribing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe leave a comment. We really do like hearing your thoughts.
We do. And this gradual erosion, this drift you mentioned, it often traces back to something we call self-abandonment.
Self-abandonment, okay.
It's usually not a conscious decision like, I'm going to disappear now. It's more of a learned pattern. Sometimes it starts really early in our first relationships.
Right. Okay. So let's unpack that a bit more, this idea of self-abandonment. You mentioned early experiences. How can those first lessons about connection shape this feeling later on in our adult relationships?
Well, for some people, their early life experiences might have taught them that love, or maybe approval, was conditional.
Conditional how?
Like maybe their own needs, their feelings, they were only acknowledged or met if they put someone else's needs first, consistently.
Oh, okay.
And this can lead to this really deep, often unconscious belief that your own inner world, what you want, what you think, what you feel, is somehow less important. Or worse, that it might actually threaten the connection if you express it. So as adults, especially in intimate partnerships, these sort of old relational blueprints can just unconsciously play out.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like we're carrying these invisible rule books for how to relate.
Precisely.
And you also mentioned how our nervous system gets involved, the classic fight, flight, fawn, and freeze responses. How do those show up when we start to lose ourselves?
Yeah, the fawn response is particularly relevant here. That's where we instinctively prioritize our partner's needs and emotions. We try to keep them happy, keep things smooth.
Feel safe?
Exactly. To maintain the connection and feel secure. It can look like just being really accommodating or always trying to please or appease them, sometimes at a really significant cost to our own well-being. And while it might look like love or empathy on the surface, underneath it can actually be a survival strategy, making ourselves smaller, less demanding to feel safe.
Okay. And the others? Freeze.
Yeah,
Flight.
Right. So freeze can show up as emotional numbing, feeling detached, maybe a bit spaced out. It's a way to cope with the discomfort of not feeling really seen or heard.
Like just checking out emotionally.
Kind of, yeah. And flight could look like avoiding conflict at all costs, shying away from difficult conversations. Again, it's about trying to preserve this sense of stability, even if it's a fragile one.
It's amazing how these deep-seated responses just operate under the radar.
Isn't it? Very much so.
Now, another concept you brought up was emotional fusion, this idea of we're kind of swallowing the I. Can you paint a picture of what that looks like day to day?
Emotional fusion is, well, it's essentially when the psychological boundaries between two people get really blurry.
Blurry how?
Their emotional states become so tangled up, it's hard to tell where one person's feelings, thoughts, or needs end and the other's begin. If one partner feels sad, the other immediately feels sad too, almost automatically absorbs it.
Like emotional osmosis.
Exactly. There's a real lack of individual emotional space, of autonomy within the relationship. It's like they're operating as one emotional unit.
So it sounds really close, maybe even intense, but maybe not healthy in the long run.
Precisely. That's the key distinction.
Right.
While it might feel like profound closeness, especially at first, a truly healthy connection allows for differentiation.
Differentiation. Okay.
That's the ability to be emotionally close, really connected, but still maintain a clear, strong sense of your own identity, your own thoughts, feelings, needs, separate from your partner's.
Right, you're still you.
Exactly. Fusion, on the other hand, it gets mistaken for intimacy all the time, but it often breeds resentment down the line. Confusion. It stifles personal growth. It's more like identity diffusion, not real intimacy.
And that lack of clear boundaries you mentioned, that sounds like it could lead to other
It
problems.
absolutely can. That lack of clear emotional boundaries in fusion, it creates really fertile ground for codependent patterns to take root.
Which brings us neatly to codependency. You called it a chronic identity leak. I like that description. What does codependency actually look like in everyday life with a partner?
In daily life, codependency might show up as constantly needing to check in with your partner, feeling really anxious about any kind of conflict, even small disagreements,
Okay.
feeling overly guilty if you try to prioritize your own needs, or even just say no to something they ask. There's often this deep, maybe unconscious belief that your own value as a person is tied directly to your partner's happiness.
Wow.
You might find yourself always trying to guess what they need before they even say it, or feeling responsible for managing their emotions.
So it's definitely more than just being caring or supportive.
Oh, absolutely. The crucial difference is the motivation behind it and the impact on your own self-worth.
Right.
Being supportive is about caring while maintaining your own boundaries, your own inner compass. Codependency involves this over-reliance on their happiness for your sense of okayness. Your value gets tied up in fixing them, pleasing them, being needed by them.
And your own voice gets lost.
It gets drowned out. Yeah. Your intuition, your inner guidance system, it gets overridden by what you perceive their needs and expectations to be.
You've outlined 5 key signs that someone might be losing themselves. Let's dig into the first one. Constantly prioritizing their needs over your own. What's the deeper psychology there?
Psychologically, this often goes back to that hyper-attunement we talked about, being super sensitive to the partner's emotional state.
The fawn response again?
Often, yes. It feels safer to keep the partner pleased, keep things calm, to maintain that connection, even if it means your own needs consistently go unmet. It's like a survival strategy, prioritizing their state over your own well-being.
And what about the nervous system? What signals might show up?
On a nervous system level, you might feel just emotionally exhausted all the time. Maybe a subtle feeling of anxiety or dread before you see your partner.
Oh, interesting.
Or even a big sense of relief when they're happy or content. It's like your nervous system is working overtime trying to regulate their emotions, and it burns you out. It's like empathy gone into overdrive, absorbing their feelings without being able to process them healthily.
That description of walking on eggshells comes to mind again.
Exactly.
So what's a practical first step someone could take to start reconnecting with their own needs?
Something simple, but really powerful, is a daily self-check-in.
Okay.
Just take a moment, maybe before you even interact with your partner much that day, and ask yourself, what do I actually need today? Maybe even write it down.
Could be anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
Quiet time, a walk, expressing a feeling. Then make a conscious choice to prioritize at least one of those needs, without apologizing for it, without asking permission, just honoring it.
That feels manageable. A good starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Sign number 2. You mentioned no longer really knowing what you want or like. That sounds significant. What's happening psychologically there?
We often call this identity dissolution.
Dis-
Yeah. When you suppressed your own desires, your preferences, for a long time maybe to match your partner's, those desires can actually start to fade from your own awareness.
Wow.
You get so used to mirroring them, their hobbies, their routines, that your own sense of you can just shrink, become vague. It's like your internal compass gets rusty from lack of use.
And how does the nervous system respond to that kind of internal disconnection?
Often with a kind of numbing or shutdown, a freeze response, in a way.
So not feeling much.
Yeah, you might feel a general lack of enthusiasm, maybe less motivation. Things you used to love don't seem interesting anymore.
Right.
A lot of emotional fatigue. It's not laziness.
No.
It's often the nervous system conserving energy because it feels disconnected from your core self, like emotional hibernation.
Right. What's a practical way to start reigniting those sparks, getting that compass working again?
Go back to the archives. Revisit old passions.
Like what?
Think about hobbies, activities, even just music you loved before the relationship, or maybe early on. Even just spending 15 minutes listening to old favorite songs or sketching if you used to draw. It can help reactivate those dormant parts of yourself. Remind you what you to light you up.
I like that. Rekindling old flames, but with yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, the third sign, feeling really anxious when you're apart from your partner. We touched on attachment earlier. Can you expand on the psychology behind that separation anxiety?
Yeah, this persistent anxiety when you're apart often points towards anxious attachment patterns,
It's from childhood.
usually stemming from early experiences where connection felt inconsistent or unpredictable, maybe unreliable. So the nervous system learns to be hypervigilant about separation. It unconsciously reads it as a threat to the relationship, and therefore a threat to your safety.
And physically, what does that look like? The nervous system signals.
You might notice things like your heart racing,
Mm.
thoughts spiraling, often worrying about your partner, what they're doing, if they're okay.
Or if they still care.
Exactly. Or a really strong urge to constantly check in, text, call. These are signs your nervous system is in hyperarousal, interpreting being apart as a danger signal.
So what's a helpful practice to build more internal security? Feeling okay when you're alone.
Practicing solo presence is really key here.
Solo presence.
Intentionally doing things where you're just present with yourself without needing external validation or distraction. Mindful walks are great for this, journaling your thoughts and feelings, even just sitting quietly for a few minutes. The goal is to build that internal sense of safety, that feeling of being okay that isn't dependent on your partner being right there physically or digitally. It helps the nervous system gradually learn that being apart isn't the same as being abandoned.
Right. Teaching it a new pattern. Okay, sign number 4. That feeling of constantly walking on eggshells. So common. What's the psychological dynamic there?
Constantly editing yourself, watching what you say and do to avoid upsetting your partner. It's often a learned behavior. It might stem from emotional suppression or maybe trauma patterns from growing up in volatile environments where approval depended on being good.
So it's not real harmony.
Not at all. It's hypervigilance,
Yeah.
self-censorship. You're prioritizing their emotional stability over your own authenticity, your own freedom to just be.
And the nervous system's role in that constant monitoring.
It gets stuck in that state of hypervigilance,
Yeah.
always scanning for cues, their mood, tone of voice, body language, anticipating potential negative reactions, and adjusting your behavior to try and prevent them.
It sounds exhausting.
It is. It's
Yeah.
like your nervous system is perpetually braced, never really feeling safe or relaxed in the relationship.
What's one small thing someone can do to start reclaiming their voice, feeling a bit safer to be themselves?
Start really small. Try speaking one small truth each day.
A small truth.
It doesn't have to be a big confrontation. It could be as simple as saying, actually, I'm feeling pretty tired tonight, or, that comment didn't quite land right with me. Just something authentic.
Okay.
Each time you express something real, even minor, you're anchoring yourself back into your own experience. It starts to gently push back against that pattern of self-suppression.
Makes sense. One small truth at a time. The final sign you mentioned is losing the ability to set boundaries. This feels so foundational. What's driving that difficulty?
Often it's rooted in those people-pleasing tendencies we've discussed, which, again, can be a nervous system safety strategy.
Right. Saying yes to avoid trouble.
Exactly. Saying yes when you mean no becomes the default mode to avoid conflict or keep approval.
Right.
But the cost is huge. Resentment builds up. You feel overwhelmed, and your sense of self just keeps eroding.
And how does the nervous system signal that lack of boundaries, that constant giving in?
You might feel chronically drained, voiceless, like you have no say in decisions, a general feeling of passivity in the relationship. Sometimes this can even be a sign of what's called dorsal vagal shutdown.
Dorsal vagal. What's that?
It's a protective state where the nervous system basically goes into surrender mode, withdrawal. It's a way to cope with feeling overwhelmed and powerless when healthy boundaries aren't there, kind of like playing dead emotionally.
Wow. Okay. What's a practical technique to start creating some space for boundaries?
A really simple but incredibly effective phrase is, "Let me get back to you on that."
Buying time.
Precisely. It creates a pause. It interrupts that automatic yes. It gives you breathing room to actually check in with yourself. Do I want to do this? Can I do this? What do I need? And allows your genuine response, your real yes or no, to surface instead of just reacting out of habit or fear.
That's a great tool. Okay, so if someone's listening and recognizing several of these signs, what are some overall ways they can start reclaiming themselves without necessarily ending the relationship?
A really crucial piece is engaging in what we call inner bonding.
Inner bonding?
Yeah, consciously nurturing your inner child. Those parts of you that maybe felt unworthy or unseen way back when. It's about learning to validate your own feelings, your own experiences now.
Giving yourself what you didn't get.
In a sense, yes.
Yeah.
And creating emotional space is also vital.
Yeah.
This isn't about pushing your partner away necessarily. It's about intentionally carving out time for healthy solitude.
Like the solo presence you mentioned.
Exactly. Journaling, hobbies, quiet reflection. It's about that process of differentiation becoming distinct again. This allows you to connect with your partner from a place of genuine choice and desire, not from an unconscious need to cling for survival or validation.
So reclaiming yourself isn't about pushing them away, it's about pulling yourself closer. to yourself.
Beautifully put. Yes.
Yeah.
Healthy relationships should enhance our individuality, not erase it.
Yeah.
True love, real connection. It reflects and honors who we are as separate whole people. Reclaiming your truth, your boundaries, your passions. It actually leads to deeper, more authentic intimacy, built on respect and real connection, not fear or self-sacrifice.
That's such an important distinction. We've covered so much valuable ground. Maybe we can touch on a few common questions people have about this.
Sure, happy to.
Okay, first one. Can you genuinely, deeply love someone and still lose yourself in the relationship?
Yes, absolutely, yes. This often happens if our inner child learns somewhere along the way that love equals self-sacrifice.
Ah.
We might unconsciously believe that to be loved, to be accepted, we have to put their needs first, always. But real healthy love actually honors individuality, both people's.
How can you tell the difference between just being a caring, supportive partner and being codependent? Where's the line?
The key is that underlying motivation and the effect on your self-worth. Caring is offering support while keeping your own boundaries intact. Codependency is when your sense of value, your feeling of being okay, becomes dependent on their happiness, on fixing them, pleasing them, being needed by them, often at your own expense.
Right. Got it. Is it actually possible to regain your sense of self while still in the relationship where you lost it?
Yes, definitely possible. It takes conscious effort, though. Internal reconnection work, setting and holding those boundaries consistently, and, crucially, honest communication with your partner about what you need and how you're feeling as you change.
It's a process.
It's absolutely a journey, yes.
Why does that emotional fusion thing feel so good, so comforting at the beginning sometimes? What's the appeal?
Well, unconsciously, it often mimics that very early, intense bonding we experienced as infants.
Ah, like going back to that feeling of oneness.
Exactly. That intense closeness can temporarily soothe old attachment wounds, make us feel really secure. But, as we've said, that initial comfort often gives way to feeling stifled later on. It hinders real, differentiated intimacy.
Okay. What if you start setting new boundaries and your partner resists? What should you expect?
Some resistance is actually pretty normal. Relationship dynamics like homeostasis, they try to stay the same, even if it's unhealthy.
Right.
The key is consistency. Keep holding the boundary calmly and clearly. A partner who is fundamentally healthy and secure will eventually adapt and respect your needs. Maybe with some bumps, but they'll adapt.
And if they don't?
Well, if they consistently react with manipulation, guilt-tripping, or actively try to undermine your boundaries, that tells you something important about the health of the dynamic itself.
That makes sense. Last question. Can therapy help with all of this?
Oh, absolutely. Hugely helpful. Especially trauma-informed approaches. Therapies focusing on attachment, nervous system regulation, inner child work. They can be incredibly valuable for untangling these deep patterns of fusion and self-abandonment.
Provides a safe space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A safe, guided space to explore it all, develop healthier ways of relating, and really restore that strong, authentic sense of self.
That's all incredibly helpful, thank you. So the main takeaway really seems to be that just becoming aware of these subtle signs, noticing when you might be losing yourself, that's the vital first step
It is. That awareness opens the door.
towards a more authentic connection with yourself first and then with your partner.
Precisely. It's about understanding that true, lasting connection really thrives when both people are whole, present, bringing their authentic selves, not when one overshadows the other.
So maybe something to reflect on. Consider which of these signs, if any, really resonated with you today. And perhaps think about one small, doable step you could take, maybe even today, to start honoring your own needs, your own voice within your relationships.
A small step can make a big difference over time.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. We really hope this conversation has offered some valuable insights and maybe some support for your own journey.